Hey everyone, I'm back. Sorry, I made a big error on scheduling. We're thrilled to have Dr. Hennigh here. I've changed time zones, and I think and I also went on a holiday, so I think my computer is confused as to where it is. So it's booking for different time zones. In any event, we're thrilled to have Dr. Quinton Hennigh here. Most of you know exactly who he is, but just in case you're a new person who stumbled across us, this is an economic geologist, 40 plus years of experience, geology and chemistry from Colorado School of Mines. He is the geologic and technical advisor at Crescat Capital, worked at Newmont, Newcrest, Barrick, was Homestake Mining at the time. So tons of experience, well known in the industry, and it's a real treat. We're going to talk specifically about Snowline Gold today. The markets have been challenging, but hey, this stock has done very well. Lots of great results. As I mentioned earlier, they've closed the $20 million placement as well. So we're going to talk to someone who knows everything, all the ins and outs. Dr. Hennigh, how are you? Thanks so much for being here.
Very good, Andrew. Good to see you again, man. It's always a pleasure.
Yes. And listen, let's just take the big bite out of what a week. And I'm glad to have you on as well on a Friday to kind of say, what's your thoughts before we jump into Snowline? What is going on?
It's funny because I started the week, we own this San Cristobal mine down in Bolivia. Yes. Okay, so every Monday I have a call and I find out what kind of trading and stuff is going on. And for months now, probably 3-4 months, I think, silver's been in backwardation. The price of silver has been rising steadily, but the futures prices have been languishing. They're kind of behind the current, the spot price. And it was like, this isn't going to last. There's going to be something happen here. Okay, this is not normal. And I remember somebody on the call saying, I think tomorrow, I think it was Tuesday, right? I can't remember exactly what day the Liberation Day announcement was, but whatever day it was. I remember somebody saying, I think there might be this whole short squeeze might dissipate very rapidly.
Yes.
There's not going to be the necessity to move precious metals over to the U.S. after everything's announced. And sure enough, man, whack. I mean, just you wouldn't believe it. I mean, how much are we down now? We were at 34, I think, on Monday, and now we're hovering around 29. So that's got to be one of the biggest moves in silver in history.
Yes. Yeah. It is. It's very. Who would expect that type of volatility in the precious metals? And I guess in one way you say, well, you're getting a lot of attention. A lot of people are recognizing that gold and silver are important, but that also means the more savvy trader types out there that are like, oh, we know what to do now that we've got some retail interest.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's certainly people that take advantage of situations like this. I guess, they're smart, they're traders, they know how to operate. But man, it's painful for for a lot of investors who've just recently piled in. Yeah. Now, that said, if people are listening for the first time, I mean, welcome to precious metals. I mean, this is how this whole industry works. It is, I remember working under a guy who called it the emotional metals, right? It's got ups and downs and nothing goes in a straight line. But I look, I'm not too worried. You look, there's been so much undercapitalization in the mining industry over the past 10 years, 10, 15 years. It's crazy. Okay, we haven't really built significant new mines. We haven't spent money in infrastructure, mine expansions, exploration. This is not going to, this isn't a healthy industry in terms of spend. And that means commodity prices are likely, unless a few billion people decide to go back to living like in the Stone Age or something. I don't know how we do this. We can only mine so much metal. So
yes. And that bigger narrative, I mean, it is very challenging times, and it's in your face more than ever as well. I mean, it's constant news. Boom, 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 boom. The overall arching narrative of the critical need for all these metals, that's still like main in the news as well. And I kind of throw that in because we're talking about tariffs, we're talking about the debt load of the U.S. I mean, in a weird sense, you can almost make the argument that gold and silver too is kind of becoming critical too now, in the sense that people are like, wait a second, I think there needs to be a fight for safety here. There's so much change that's happening. It's a story of an economic critical moment, I think.
Yep. Look, it is what it is. I mean, we're going to have to live through it, but I think at some point here, the capital is going to have to return into this space, and the driving force behind it. Maybe it's actually in the cards here. Maybe it's actually in a lot of what's going to happen during this very dynamic change. In the United States here, I can see where we are likely going to start building new mines again, and that's a good thing to see. So
yes.
Yeah.
That's a big hope, and I'm hopeful that up here we'll take a portion of that playbook as well and say and recognize that we have an opportunity and to get things going. And what a good segue to talk about Snowline Gold up in Yukon. Yep. Gold exploration. Let me tell me if I'm wrong. 360,000 hectares, 8 projects, but I think the main one, of course, is that Valley deposit at Rogue. Yep. Let's just start with let's just start with the story. How did you first get interested, know about it? I think it's 2021. Let's just start there.
Okay, look, the story actually begins a long time ago. I was working at Newmont in the 2000s, and I had an interest in picking up a project. I think it was in Wyoming at the time. And, funny enough, this guy named Ron Berdahl happened to be part owner of that project. He was partners with a fellow in Wyoming. And, as I live here in Colorado. Anyway, Ron came down to visit me to talk about a deal. And we actually had, had a cup of coffee, and Scott was with. I think Scott was probably, I can't remember, probably 14 years old or something. So I've known Scott for a long time. But anyway, fast forward, I kept in close touch with Ron and Scott. In fact, when Scott went off to university, I think he was in the university for most of the 2000 teens, which is probably a good time to be in university because the gold market was dead. But he went to MIT, and then he went to King Abdullah's University in Saudi Arabia. Nice. And so he asked if I could be a mentor for him. And I remember having quarterly calls with Scott for several years, 2013, 14, 15, 16, I think, somewhere in there. And he kept asking, he said, is this market ever going to come back? Should I really stay with this? Should I? And fortunately he did, because I think a lot of young people just don't ever get attracted to this space. But Scott persisted. He stuck with it. And, he and his dad, who had this large portfolio of projects up in the Yukon, they pulled it all together into Snowline, or I should say they pulled together the gold primary targets into Snowline in 2020. And, fortunately myself and Crescat were party to the, pre-IPO stage. We piled in. I knew Scott, and I knew the targets really well. We had talked about them many, many times. Newmont had done legwork over that area in 10, 15 years ago. And I remember seeing the data thinking, wow, there's got to be some big deposits here. Anyway, when Scott got it all piled together into Snowline, it really did crystallize what is one of the best stories I can think of in the gold space here. So
it's had an amazing couple of years. And even today, like I was saying, even though we're tough markets and they just closed the money yesterday, it's pulled back. But there's nothing indicating that there's any reason for pullback. So for some people, if you're brand new and for some reason you don't know Snowline, this is probably a very opportune time to be talking about what they've got. So let's just jump right in there and let you kind of take off what, we won't start right from the beginning, but like what are some of the results that really kind of stuck out where you're like, okay, we're really on to something here?
Okay, if you look back, they were drilling first up at Jupiter. It's up in the Einarson project there, so it's in the yellow package on this map on the right-hand side. Jupiter is an orogenic gold system. I remember Scott bringing some pieces of rock to show me at, it was right before COVID hit. It was at the Roundup convention in Vancouver in 2020. And I just finished work at Fosterville with Kirkland and stuff, and I looked at I said, yeah, Scott, I think you're onto something. Looked very interesting. And look, they did drill it that year. They drilled some holes. They had some really nice, many 100+ gram meter drill holes out of the Jupiter project. But what really caught my attention was right at the end of the season, Scott snuck in and did, I think, 3 or 4 holes at Valley. Okay, so late in the season, he undertook a drill campaign. I think it was 4 holes at Valley, and those turned out to be on the west end of the Valley discovery. Okay, so they weren't quite in the heart of it, but man, those holes came back. I think 3 out of 4 of them or something like that was over 100 gram meters, and they were long runs, long runs of gramish type grades. That really caught my attention. I think at Crescat we just started buying up shares, yeah. And for the entire winter, everybody was like, oh, it's winter time, they're not going to have any news, whatever. We were just buying and buying and buying and buying. We bought shares all winter long, and then in May of 2022, when they went back in and drilled, Scott showed me the grid drill program that he'd laid out with holes. They'd done geophysics and stuff, so they knew where the intrusion was. But he laid out a grid program. And I remember in June, I think it was, they announced the first visuals from that drill program. And every single hole that they had drilled, they hit long runs, veining just all the way down the holes, little specks of EG in the veins and stuff. And it was just game on. Like we jumped in, we helped them do a placement in June so they could keep going, keep that momentum going. Another party jumped in, a good friend of mine. Now he's a real nice guy, Alex, jumped in and he participated in the placement too. And it was riveting to watch that story unfold, because 2022 really was the year of discovery at Valley.
Yeah. What are some of the you're a geologist, so let's talk a little technical. What are some of the features, the geological features of Valley, or just even the Selwyn Basin that is like conducive or so particularly promising about large scale gold discovery? And that's, I think, what really attracts people to, is that we're like, I think it's 4 million ounces right now that they've got. Like, it's large scale, big numbers, big producers like to see this. What are some of those features?
Yeah, sure. Look at Valley, they're actually a bit over 7 million. I think it's 7.
Oh, it's 7. Okay.
Yeah, and I think they'll see significant addition from the drilling they did in 2024 as well. So we're going to see an updated MRE here, probably, I don't know, within a couple of months is what I've heard. But look, this is a really interesting geologic environment. Okay, so in the Yukon, you have a belt that kind of transects from east to west across the midsection of the Yukon. It actually extends a little bit into Northwest Territories, and then it goes on into Alaska as well. And, the name Tintina Belt is usually thrown around. You also hear the term Tombstone Belt. Okay, tombstone is because the rock that hosts the gold is a granite. It looks like a tombstone. They call it, because there's so many of these granites down this belt, they call it the Tombstone Belt. It is a really interesting style of deposit. Okay, you get these intrusions coming up, and because the magmas have a certain chemistry, they have ability to carry a lot of gold. And as they come up into the near surface environment and they start to crystallize, all the magma starts to solidify, the gold doesn't really have a home in the crystal lattice of the minerals that are forming. So it's kind of flushed out, okay? And it's flushed out with the waters and the other fluids that come off of the magma as it crystallizes. That goes into forming these deposits, these carapace deposits over the top of the intrusion. Sometimes the gold goes out into the country rocks around the intrusion. Banyan, for example, sees that kind of system. But here at Valley, they saw just a huge concentration of gold form in what appears to be the carapace, the top, the roof of an intrusion that came up, and it is just an amazing deposit. It's high grade. It's right below surface. It's very consistent in grade. You don't see a lot of nugget effect. Like when they drill a hole, it's driven by grade. It's just, hundreds of meters of 2-3 gram type stuff the whole way down. I cannot think of a more consistent geologic ore body I've ever seen in my life than Valley.
That was going to be my follow-up question. Like with these reduced intrusion-related gold systems, how does that deposit grade and tonnage compared to other ones that you've seen? Like, I mean, I think you've kind of answered it, but what? Like that was the next question I had.
Well, like the classic model for tombstone or reduced intrusive type gold system started with Fort Knox, which is in Alaska. It's near Fairbanks, Alaska, and I think it was found mid to late 1980s. I think it was actually one of Friedland's companies, believe it or not, that first discovered it and then drilled it. But then Amex Gold carried it forward to become a mine. Look, Fort Knox, I think the initial reserve was on the order of a few million ounces, like 3 or 4 million ounces. Today, it's produced 7 or 8-ish, maybe, and it's on its way to probably ultimately producing, say, 10 or 12, maybe at closure. But it's a big deposit, okay? And I would say that Valley compares quite well to Fort Knox, but it's better. Okay, why is it better? Fort Knox, the first days of that mine. In fact, I went up to site in September of 1996. I was there right after they opened. The first benches were running 0.96 grams per ton. Okay, a little less than a gram per ton. Everybody, think about this. This is 1996. Everybody's thinking, "Oh my gosh, a 1 gram deposit in Alaska? That's crazy." But it made great money. Okay, it did well. But Snowline, the Valley deposit, the grade of the high grade that's sitting in there right below grassroots is more like 2 gram, 2.5 gram. This thing is way higher grade. So what does that translate? Look, it translates to likely a much, much higher margin. A lot of people say, "Oh my gosh, it's remote, it's gonna be expensive to develop," and da, 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 da. Yeah, it is. It's kind of remote, but it's not that bad. But man, when you look at a deposit like that, what you see on the screen, and you have your high grade sitting right there, this mine is going to absolutely kill it. I mean, this is the kind of thing the majors need. It could probably produce a few hundred, like 4, 5, 600,000 ounces per year for the first 7 or 8 years, and then from there it might be 200,000 or 300,000 ounces a year. But it's going to go on for a long, long time, a very long time.
I some of these are forward-looking statements, and some are just we may not have all of that. But like as far as metallurgical considerations, like what's your take on that? Is it pretty clean, or what's your take on the recovery rates?
I'm glad you asked about metallurgy, because one of the things that I find lacking in the investment community is an appreciation for the importance of metallurgy. Okay, to get the metals out of a rock that you're interested in is paramount. I mean, it's the most important thing, other than discovering the darn thing in the first place. But in this case, you've got gold that is free. It's free. You can see a picture here with gold grains. So there's a couple of big grains up at the top, and then down along the bottom there, you see areas where you got yellow that's kind of intergrown with some sulfide. You might say, well, geez, it's kind of tied, together with the sulfide. But think about it. If you're going to mill this rock and grind it up down into particles that are sub 100 microns, probably 50 microns, and that scale bar, notice the scale bar in the right there, okay?
Yeah.
Or right corner, that's 100 microns. So if you can kind of mentally reduce this rock into little particles that are, say much smaller than that scale bar, those gold grains are going to liberate. Okay, they're going to break free of everything else around them. That means it comes right up, boom. Okay, and gold loves to. You can recover that through gravity processing. So you can actually put it across the shaker table, get most of the gold out in gravity, and then the remaining gold is not going to be tied up in quartz and sulfides. Okay, it's going to be free to leach, which means you're going to get fantastic recovery from, your carbon and leach circuit too. So like there are a few deposits on Earth that have metallurgy that is so forgiving as this.
That's huge. So that's what I think. That's the follow-up question. People get excited, as you're well aware, of the discovery. Like, oh, we found something. But then it's like the quick joy of then, well, like what's it going to cost to A, get it out, and then 2, what is the metallurgy like? Is it clean? Is it get? And that's pretty fantastic to hear that that's the situation that Snowline Gold is sitting on.
Like, to put it in perspective, when gold is tied up, like truly tied up at the atomic level in the sulfide lattice, you have to then break down that sulfide mineral. That means energy. You got to use energy to get it out. In this case, yeah, you got to grind it up. That takes some energy. But beyond that, you're going to recover the gold through gravity, most of it through gravity. That's cheap. That's really cheap. And then cyanide leaching, very cheap as well. So you got two of the cheapest means of treating gold ores that are immediately amenable to this style of mineralization.
Yeah. Also, I mean, I'd be remiss not to ask, like, as far as possible expansion, they've said, like, listen, they've indicated there's mineralization extending beyond the current boundaries and resources, but and I don't want to say, hey, what do you think it's going to be? But like, I think it doesn't hurt to like remind people that the story's not over. Like, there's not saying, hey, we've got this is what we have. We're going to go from there. Is that this story is still developing, and you're saying it's 7 million ounces. I mean, this is very compelling. What can you say in regards to stepping out or expansion or being open?
Okay, first of all, there are areas around the existing valley deposit that still need to be closed off. I'm not saying there's just huge upside around the immediate vicinity of valley, but one hole in particular that caught everyone's attention last year is hole 115, which was on the northeast side of the valley discovery. And it was a fair ways out. I think it was like 300 meters off to the northeast. And it hit a long run of a half gram. It was like 0.5, 0.6 gram or something like this. Most people are like, whatever, it's low grade, blah. No, that hole actually hit a new phase, like a dike or some other intrusion that appears to be a gold center.
Okay,
one thing we know about these reduced intrusions is they come up in apophyses. They come up in like impulses, okay? And they can be, clustered tightly together, or sometimes they can be far apart. You can get multiple deposits in a district, say. But what we see in hole 115 is almost surely an indication that there is going to be more mineralization that projects off to the northeast. Maybe there's a new mineral center over there. One of the enigmas of the whole valley project is that there's this anomaly off to the northeast called Gracie, a gold anomaly in soil that has yet to be accounted for, like explained. And when I see hole 115, I'm thinking, wow, maybe there's a buried intrusion up in that direction that hasn't been discovered yet. Can you imagine finding another valley, like one right next to the other? Like,
yes.
That's a love. Yeah.
That would be huge. Yeah, so that's great. I love when you have these holes that people kind of oversee. They go, oh, okay, that was not exciting. But to get the context then to decipher that, wait a second, no, this is possibly indicating more. That's really that's very exciting to hear.
And look, they've got other targets. This slide actually shows some of the other targets on the property. Okay, these are other reduced intrusions. So these are more scattered widely across the area. I'm not talking about immediate vicinity of valley, but they have all those little blue stars, I think you see there, are reduced intrusives here. Okay, you basically can't swing a cat without hitting the reduced intrusive. And I know that they haven't found another valley yet, but some of these actually produce some pretty good early stage results, like this Aurelius target. 2 grams over 17. That's not to be dismissed. Okay, 2 grams over 17 meter sounds like a near miss to me. And then you have the other one, like this Venus. You got, what is it? 9 grams over 38 meters. I mean, there's these need follow up. Okay, just give them time. Scott and his team are smart. They'll find more.
Now, as far as infrastructure, I know years ago I saw there was a lot of money investment into like Yukon roads and whatnot from the feds and whatnot. Are there challenges? And then, of course, that's the positive. But in where they're at, what's the infrastructure? What's that kind of look like if they're if they continue the path they're going? What's the infrastructure kind of situation looking like as far as?
Actually,
definitely thinking far ahead.
That's a great question. In fact, it's the foremost question for this project. Is how can this be developed? Okay, it is remote, out in eastern Yukon, but you got to remember that this district, this region, those Selwyn Basin sediments that you mentioned earlier, actually host some of the biggest unmined lead zinc deposits in the world.
All right,
and Fireweed is not far from here. So they've got Mac Pass or McMillan Pass, and then there's other ones in this area too. But you're starting to see a concerted effort to actually start to push roads out into these areas. I think I saw some news around Fireweed not too long ago about completing some road access in there. So up the valley, you have to go up and around. It's literally in the valley up in the country, so you have to go around these mountains to go up in there to get to it. But there is a winter road not too far away, and it can be extended and converted into a all-season road. Okay, so this is not like working in Nunavut or territories or so. This is relatively straightforward. As long as they have support and permit this, this should be doable. It's going to take some capital, but we're talking a few tens of millions of dollars for constructing a road.
And I'd forgotten about Fireweed, which is an exceptional story as well. That being nearby, that doesn't hurt. That's great because you can have a little hub there. That's pretty exciting as well. So what do you think? It's very challenging times right now, and that's why I'm glad we have you on right now. Of course, in challenging times, it also, especially if you're new and you're hearing about this, that also provides an exciting opportunity to go, well, wait a second, I'm interested in gold. What's a hot story that is developing at a great pace? And this perhaps is one for people to pay more attention to. What are some things other than, hey, get familiar with what's happened and get caught up to speed, but what do you think is going to happen in the months, 3 months, 6 months ahead that people have to really keep their eyes out for?
If you want me to put Snowline in that context, I think this is probably the best gold story in the market right now. If you look around at what's out there in inventory for a major to come and grab, this one is probably the top of the list. Okay.
Yeah.
It's in North America. It's in a region that can be permitted. We talked about infrastructure. It's not too ungodly to build a road in there. The grades, every aspect of the deposit, the metallurgy, everything's fantastic. This thing is the top of the list. I guarantee you, the top of the list, of the acquisition list for all gold companies. Okay, so this one is a kind of a no-brainer. Now, how does that look? Like, let's say a major came in here. Well, look at Snowline's land package, absolutely huge. And they got targets all over the place. Okay.
Yes.
What's a likely outcome? I can't predict everything 100%, but if I had to guess, I would say a major would probably buy Snowline for the Valley deposit, and then you'd see a spin out, of the rest of the project, right, or the rest of the ground they have, into a new company, and then you got another horse to ride. Okay, that's great. That would be a delightful outcome. That's what really creates a lot of wealth for investors if they're in a story like that where there's another pony to ride.
Yes.
But look, if you step back and you look, I don't want to talk other companies in the sense that I want to dismiss what Snowline has. Snowline is awesome. Okay, but there are other companies in this belt. I talked about this Tombstone belt, this Tintina belt earlier, and you got a whole chain of these things. Okay, so off to the east from here, you got Rakla, and Rakla found the grad target last year. Okay, and wow, you want to talk about something that looks a heck of a lot like Valley, sheeted veins. They did channel samples across this mountain, and they were getting great results. It wasn't just like soils or something like this. It was actual channel samples, and they're getting good numbers. Okay, so Rakla's one to watch. I really think that those guys could go ahead and poke some holes in there this year and do fantastic. Sitka's drilling right now over this to the west. Okay, so the west from Snowline. Sitka is drilling right now, and thank goodness they did focus on the grade. Okay, so back in 2023, they started to hit some higher grades, and in 2024, we came in, we put some money in, and we talked to let's focus on grade, and they did. They focus, and now they got like a 2.8 million ounce resource, and it's a bit over a gram. It's a good deposit. It's on track to be a much larger system too. I think it could be like Fort Knox scale ultimately. So I don't have a problem with that one. And I've talked to Tara recently and her team about some of the new high grade that they've been seeing at Banyan at the Ormac target. And they're starting to figure things out there too. So look, you could go clear over into Alaska. Tectonic, one of my favorite stories. Tectonic had a drill hole in Alpha Basin, which is it was the northernmost hole that they drilled last year. it was like 65 meters of 1.5 grams or 2 or something at Alpha Basin. It's like, oh, holy cow, they've made a discovery. I'm telling you, like this region, this Tintina belt is going to light up over the next few years. This is going to be ground zero for gold space for years to come.
That's a lot of information right there. That's a great soundbite too. We'll make sure to get that out for people to follow up with. But listen, that was fantastic. And once again, just because things are tough right at this second, this is mining. We have to have a long focus. And the narrative over mining isn't changing. Like it's, if nothing else, when we talk about these tariffs or we talk about supply chains and all that, it's all under the auspice of these critical metals as well as mining. It's the acknowledgement that we're going to be doing this. And I think more and more people are coming around. But maybe it is also, I mean, not that we'll talk about traders and all that, but maybe because of that, you also, the vultures are circling too to go, ooh, how do I get back into this market? So, but that could be a good sign.
Yeah, like the pounding that we've had this past week, it is probably a good opportunity. I do think it's going to be volatile though for a while. So there's going to be a lot of this, and if people want to trade, on that, good luck to you. That drives me nuts. Like trying to, I can't do that. Okay, but I like investing in stories where I know that the rocks are going to deliver value. Basically, these are going to be world-class mines over the next few years. And really, we're opening up a whole new district. I look back at every single gold cycle in the years that I've been around, and I look at like Northern Nevada. That was epicenter in the 80s, and then West Africa, and then like you look at each cycle. There's a district, a camp that kind of crystallizes. This cycle, Yukon, Tintina, Alaska. Okay, boom, that's it.
That's it. Excellent. Well, Dr. Hennigh, thanks so much. This has been a real pleasure. You heard it here, and we'll get it out to everyone. And pay attention. I mean, this is great stuff. It's been amazing watching Snowline as well. And thank you for all the knowledge and passing it along to all of us. We really appreciate it. And also for those other companies too that we're going to follow up with and take a quick peek at too, because that would be wonderful to see that whole. When you see a bunch of winners in a region, it makes that region look very attractive. And people don't say, hey, you know what? Maybe we should build this out because it's going to carry. We can share the costs of building this area out.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. Enjoy your Friday, and we'll talk to you real soon. And it's tough times out there, but we'll put on our glasses looking forward rather than looking in the past.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Doctor. Take care.
Take care.